Hello students, Standard 6 Revision in the Chemistry chapter number 5, that is separation of substances. Now you are familiar with the mixtures in which some substances are mixed such that they retain their original shape and size and all the characteristics. Now, sometimes we need to separate them, as we already talked. Sometimes to remove the unwanted substances, sometimes to remove the harmful substances, sometimes to separate all the substances which are useful one or the other way, and sometimes to get the pure substance. So in this situation, we need to use some different methods according to the type of the substances in the mixture, size, texture, solubility, etc., etc. In the beginning, we learn to separate the solid particles, like the methods of hand picking, tracing, winnowing, etc. And then we learn about the method of sieving also. In the last session, we learn about the substances which are mixed in water, in which some are heavy, some are lighter, which float. Then we use the steps together of sedimentation, decantation, and filtration, and we separate the substances. And I already explained about it that from the water also, when it is muddy, mixed with the soil and other things, we can use the sedimentation, decantation, and lastly the filtration. We remove the tea leaves after the tea is prepared by the use of that strainer. That is the method of filtration. Now, another method is the evaporation. What is evaporation? When we give heat to water, what happens to water? Water is getting boiled, and then it is turning into the vapor. So the process of conversion of water into vapor, means from a liquid to gas, that process is known as evaporation. The evaporation takes place at all places where the water is present. Whenever the water is present, the evaporation process is always taking place. Now, you use that common salt, namak, મીઠું જેને આપણે કહીએ છીએ. We use that salt in our daily food because it contains some minerals which are very useful for our body. So now you know the taste of salt. It is salty. Now where it come from? How do you get that salt? Generally, you know that sea water. Have you ever tasted your sea water? Generally, when we taste the water, it is very, very salty. All the sea water is very salty. Because there are so many salts like sodium chloride, magnesium chloride, and so many other salts are there. And all the salt tastes salty. And therefore, the water, sea water, tastes salty. Now, if you want to separate that sea water from the sea water, we want to separate the salt, then we have to use this evaporation. For that we can understand at a smaller place also, like you can take a beaker, glass beaker, take some water and dissolve salt in it. So now the water is salty like a sea water. Then put it on the tripod and heat that beaker from the bottom. Then you will see that after some time the water starts boiling and it is getting slowly evaporated. So the water is going in the air in the form of water vapor. You have to keep hitting, keep giving heat to that beaker until most of the water is getting evaporated. So then, when the most of the water is evaporated, then let the beaker get cooled down and check what is remaining. You will see that the salt that we dissolved in the water will remain in the beaker after all of the water is getting evaporated. It means that from the mixture of water and salt, we cannot separate them by filtration because the salt is getting dissolved. It is not in the form of solid particles. So when you filter it along with the water, it is also getting filtrated. So we cannot use that method. So we have to use the evaporation method. So the water will get evaporated and the salt particles will remain there in the beaker. And thus we can separate. Now the same thing is used to obtain salt from the sea water. From that, what is done? That sea water is allowed to stand in a shallow pits. They make the pits, but not too deep, shallow, and allow the water to stand in that shallow pit. Then due to the sunlight, the heat of the sun, generally in the summertime when it is very hot weather, then the water start evaporating. Then in few days all the water will get evaporated from that pits, and there will be the mixture of different salt will remain in that pit. So here we can see that the water gets heated by the sunlight and slowly turns into the water vapor, leaving all the salt behind. The solid salt will be collected from that pits, and then from that mixture the further chemical processes are purification are done, and then the common salt is separated. So here we are using the evaporation method to separate the salt from the seawater. Now sometimes what happens that to separate the substance, one method is not enough to separate the substances. Then we can use more than one methods also to separate the substances from the mixture. For example, if you take a mixture of sand and salt, now how will you separate that? Because salt is also very fine particles, sand particles are also very fine. Then hand picking will not be the convenient method. So in this, what we have to do? So in this, to separate that, we have to add some water in it. Add some water in it and leave behind for some time. Then you will observe that the sand will settle down at the bottom and salt will dissolve in it. So now by the sedimentation you can see that the sand particles will settle down, and then we can take out the water by the decantation and filtration. But here we only separated the sand particles. Now how to get separate the salt from water? One of the way is that you can evaporate it, and then water will get evaporated, we can find the salt. But we need to separate salt and water both together. Then what can we do it? And for that we cannot alone use the method of evaporation. Because if you use the method of evaporation, you will be able to get the salt, but you won't be able to get that water also back. So when we want both of them, we have to use evaporation and condensation, both method together. So what is the condensation? Maybe you have observed in your kitchen when something is cooking in the utensils along with water. Then we put the lid on it. When you pick up the hot lid, then you will see that there are the water droplets down that lid. Or when you open the pressure cooker also, you will see the water droplets there. So it happened because of the process of condensation. So what is condensation? The process of conversion of water vapor into its liquid form is called condensation. So when the water vapor are getting cooled down, they convert back into their liquid form, and that is the condensation. So now the question is, how can we get water and sand both separated? Then what we have to do, we have to take a kettle. I hope you have seen that kettle in which the tea vendors at the tea ચાની લારી આપણે કહીએ ત્યાં. So they say, they make the tea and then pour it into a kettle which look like this. It have a spout, there is a handle, then there is a lid. So you can open the lid and put that mixture of water and salt in it. Now put that kettle on the stove or give heat. Then you will see that after few seconds, when the water starts boiling, the vapor will come out of the spout. Then if you keep a metallic plate or a fry pan, putting the ice on it, then what will happen? Due to ice, the temperature will go down and then the water vapor cool down and turn into water. And then if you put any vessel down there, then all the water will drop in it. And then when all the water is evaporated from the spout, no vapor will come out. Then you open the kettle, then you will find your salt. So here how many methods did we use? Sedimentation, decantation, filtration, evaporation and condensation. So sometimes it happens that we have to use more than one methods to separate the substances from the mixture. Here we are going to finish today's session and will be followed by the PDF. And if you get any difficulties, write down in the comment section. Thank you very much.